All right, everyone, buckle up because today we're diving deep, and I mean deep, into the heart of the Philippines.
Going beyond those beautiful beaches and incredible landscapes we usually hear about.
Exactly. We're talking about the indigenous tribes of the Philippines.
A world of culture and history that's so often overlooked.
And trust me, you are going to be blown away by what we uncover today.
I am excited to learn alongside you as always.
Our guide for this journey is Festive Pinoy, this really cool website dedicated to celebrating Filipino culture. And
It's a treasure trove of information.
seriously, we're talking over 110 distinct indigenous groups in the Philippines, each with their own unique traditions, languages.
It's incredible, right? And it makes you realize just how much we miss when we think of a country as just, one single entity.
Totally. It's like, geographically speaking, you've got over 7,641 islands that make up the Philippines.
7,641 islands, each one with its own ecosystem, its own story.
Talk about diversity.
And that diversity in the environment, it's what's led to such an incredible range of cultures.
It's like each island is its own little world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You've got volcanic islands, lush rainforests, stunning coastlines.
And each of those environments has shaped the lives and traditions of the people who call it home.
It's fascinating to think about, isn't it? This kind of interplay between humans and nature.
It really is. Take the Ifugao people, for example, up in the Cordillera region of Luzon.
Oh, the ones with the incredible rice terraces.
You know it. Have you ever seen pictures? It's like they carved these terraces right into the mountainsides. Generations of knowledge went into that.
It's more than just farming. It's art, engineering, a deep understanding of the land.
And it's sustainable. They've been cultivating rice on those terraces for centuries.
Exactly. And then you head down to the Visayas, the heart of the archipelago, and it's a whole different world.
Right. The Visayan people, they're all about the sea, aren't they?
Seafaring traditions, fishing techniques that have been passed down for generations, a deep respect for the ocean.
It's in their blood.
It really is.
Look.
They navigate by the stars, understand the currents, know the best fishing spots. And speaking of the sea, we can't forget the Badjao people.
Oh, the sea gypsies,
Really?
right? Yes, living in houses built on stilts, right over the water.
Can you imagine waking up every morning, the ocean literally at your doorstep?
Their connection to the sea is so profound. It's not just a source of food or a way to get around. It's a part of their very identity. They've adapted to live not just near the sea, but with the sea.
And that's a recurring theme we see with the indigenous groups in the Philippines, this incredible ability to adapt and thrive in such diverse environments.
And we're just scratching the surface here. We haven't even touched on the Lumad people of Mindanao, groups like the Manobo and the Tuboli.
Oh, they're incredible. Living in the rainforests, relying on the land for everything, and possessing this amazing knowledge of plants and animals.
Their understanding of the rainforest, the way they live in harmony with nature, it's something we can all learn from.
Absolutely. It's about respect, sustainability, and recognizing that we're all connected to the environment around us.
Which makes their stories even more important to understand, especially today.
Right, because these communities, they're facing some very real challenges to their way of life.
And that's something we need to talk about because it's not all idyllic, is it? It's almost hard to imagine, right? Like these cultures, these whole communities, they're struggling to exist, to be recognized.
It's a really tough reality. The article calls it non-recognition, and when you hear about it, it sounds kind of bureaucratic, but...
It's so much bigger than that, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It means that many of these indigenous tribes, they're not even officially recognized by their own governments.
So legally, they're almost invisible.
In a way, yes. And that creates all sorts of barriers, especially when you think about things like...
Basic services, right? Like healthcare and education.
Exactly. Trying to access those things without official recognition, it becomes a huge uphill battle.
And then there's the issue of land, ancestral land.
That's a huge one. Because when a tribe isn't recognized, it becomes incredibly difficult for them to protect those lands.
Which are like the heart of their culture, their history, everything.
Precisely. And you can see how this lack of recognition, it creates this cycle.
And marginalization, yeah.
Pushing these communities further and further to the edges, making them vulnerable to all sorts of exploitation.
And when they lose their land, they lose a part of themselves, don't they? It's not just about a physical space. It's about
everything. Their spiritual beliefs, their cultural practices, their very identity.
The article uses the term ancestral domain, and it really struck me. It's about so much more than just ownership, isn't it?
It's a connection that goes back generations, a deep spiritual connection to the land itself.
It's in the stories they tell, the rituals they practice, the way they live their lives.
And unfortunately, this connection to the land, it's under threat, not just from things like displacement, but also from...
The environmental challenges we're seeing all over the world, right?
Exactly. Deforestation, mining, climate change. These are huge threats to these communities, to their lands, to their way of life.
Like a double blow. They're already struggling for recognition for basic rights, and then they have these massive environmental issues to contend with as well.
And these issues, they don't just damage the environment, they damage the cultures that are so deeply connected to that environment.
Right, because if a ritual requires a certain type of tree, and that tree is gone because of deforestation, it's a loss on so many levels. It's cultural destruction on top of environmental destruction.
Exactly. But it's not all doom and gloom, thankfully. The article does highlight some glimmers of hope, some examples of...
Resilience, right. Like, they're not just giving up.
Absolutely not. There's a real fighting spirit, a determination to protect what's theirs. For instance, there's the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act, IPRA, which was passed back in 1997.
Okay, so that sounds like a positive step.
It was huge. At least on paper, it recognized the ancestral domains of Indigenous peoples, their right to self-determination.
But putting those rights into practice, that's always the challenge, isn't it?
You said it. It's one thing to have a law on the books. It's another thing to make sure it's actually implemented, enforced, respected.
So there's still work to be done on that front.
Definitely. But the fact that IPRA exists at all, it's a testament to the hard work, the activism, the sheer resilience of these Indigenous communities.
They're not backing down.
Not even a little bit. And it's not just about legal battles either. The article also talks about some really inspiring community-led conservation efforts that are happening.
Oh, tell me more about that. That's what I love to hear about, those grassroots movements.
Right. Because who knows better how to protect the environment than the people who have been living in harmony with it for centuries?
Exactly. They have the knowledge, they have the practices, they have the connection.
And they're using it. Protecting their forests, restoring damaged ecosystems, working to ensure the survival of their cultures and their lands.
It's almost like they're not just fighting for their own future, but for all of ours, in a way, right? Because what happens to the environment there, it affects us all.
It's all connected, and I think that's one of the most important things to remember. These struggles, these successes, they have implications that reach far beyond the Philippines.
It's like this amazing blend of ancient wisdom and modern activism.
Exactly. They're drawing on generations of knowledge, but they're also finding new ways to fight for their rights, to make their voices heard.
And it's working, at least in some cases, like you were saying with the Taboli people, their efforts to protect their land.
It's inspiring, isn't it? They're not just waiting for someone else to fix things, they're taking action themselves.
And that's a powerful message, I think, for all of us.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that we all have a role to play in protecting the planet, in preserving cultures, in creating a more just and sustainable future.
Their stories, they remind us that it's not a lost cause. Like, we can still make a difference.
We can. And sometimes the best solutions, they come from those who are closest to the problem, who have been living with it for generations.
Like those rice terraces. Such a powerful symbol of that. They figured out how to thrive in a challenging environment centuries ago.
Exactly. And they're still thriving there today, which is amazing. Or think about the Badjao and their knowledge of the ocean.
I mean, we're just starting to understand the importance of marine conservation, and they've been living it for, centuries?
It's humbling, isn't it? It makes you realize how much we have to learn from these cultures, from their deep connection to the natural world.
That's like somewhere along the way, we lost sight of that connection, We started seeing ourselves as separate from nature.
And look where that's gotten us.
Exactly. So learning from these indigenous communities, it's not just about preserving the past. It's about, like you said, creating a better future.
100%. And I think their stories, they offer a lot of hope. They show us that resilience is possible, that even in the face of huge challenges, people can adapt, they can resist, they can find ways to protect what they hold dear.
And their fight, it's our fight too, isn't it? We're all connected.
We are, and I think that's the message we want to leave people with, to keep learning about these cultures, to support their efforts, to recognize that their fight for their rights, for their land, it's a fight for all of us.
Absolutely. So to our listeners, don't let this be the end of your journey into the world of the indigenous tribes of the Philippines.
This was just a taste, a little glimpse into this incredible tapestry of cultures.
There's so much more to discover. Go out there, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and most importantly,
keep listening.
because their stories, they have the power to change the way we see the world and maybe even inspire us to create a better one.
Couldn't have said it better myself.